My name is Garrett, and this took place when I was a sophomore in college. When I didn't get a dorm after freshman year, I scrambled for off-campus housing. Long story short, I ended up in a co-op part of a 3-house community that was sort of near campus, but not really. It wasn't ideal, but it was cheap, and I didn't have many options. Plus I had a bike, so I didn't really mind the extra travel time. Most of the residents were young students like me, but there were a few exceptions. There were a handful of alumni, 1 or 2 TAs, and a few older people getting their degrees later on in life. But the person who immediately stood out to me was an older woman who lived in one of the other houses. From what I could tell, she was maybe in her late 50s, even though she looked a little older than that. She had graying hair and walked with a sort of limp, like she had some kind of back injury. She was really quiet and mostly kept to herself, and she always had this blank expression on her face. I assumed she had some kind of connection to the university, maybe faculty or maybe an alum, but no one explained, and I didn't ask. The first time I saw her do something strange was in our common kitchen, which was a little weird to begin with because the 2 other houses had their own kitchen, so I wasn't sure why she'd be hanging out in ours. She wasn't cooking or eating or even talking to anyone. She was just standing there while the rest of us were talking and running around making dinner and listening to music. She didn't try and join in. She just watched us blankly. I caught eyes with her a few times, and part of me got the feeling that she was watching me specifically, even though I knew that was unlikely. No one acknowledged her, which I thought was a little weird too. Maybe they knew something I didn't. Later that week I was doing some homework in my room. When I saw her again, I glanced out my bedroom window and there she was, staring up at me, as if that wasn't strange enough by itself. She wasn't even on the sidewalk, but rather in the middle of the street. It was getting late, and it was decently cold too, so she must have been freezing out there. I couldn't tell if she was looking into my window or just in the general direction of the house, but I felt like she was staring at me specifically. I don't know why I did it, but I waved at her, trying to be friendly. The moment I did, I instantly regretted it. She didn't wave back. Instead, she jumped up and down a few times like she was excited, and then ran toward one of the other houses, presumably hers. I felt kind of sick. Not only had I acknowledged her, but I had confirmed that she had been looking into my room the entire time, and even if she hadn't, she now knew which room was mine. Later that night, I asked one of my housemates about her. He told me that that woman had always been there and that I should try my best to ignore her like the rest of them did. I inquired further about her, but the guy genuinely didn't know anything and said he was just repeating what someone had told him when he moved in. It didn't sit right with me, so I asked around until I got some semblance of an answer. One of the seniors in the specific house she lived in told me that she was associated with the university and was a little kooky, but that she didn't have a history of violence or getting physical. I asked him why no one found that as strange as I did, and he told me that they really couldn't control who lived there, as that decision was up to the property manager. I wasn't fully satisfied with that answer, but there was nothing I could do, so I tried to just block her out of my mind. But then it got worse. One night, I walked out of my room and nearly ran into her. She was in the hallway, standing right in front of my door. I literally jumped back, because she caught me so off guard. It was past midnight on like a Tuesday, so the house was mostly dead. She didn't say anything when she saw me. She barely even reacted. Instead, she just turned and walked away as if I were the one who had intruded on her. I'm not gonna go into every little detail, but there were several more occurrences like that one where I caught her either snooping somewhere she had no business being or doing something she had no business doing. At some point I lost my room key. All 3 houses had once been part of the same hotel, so all the rooms had personal locks and keys. It was a co-op, so most people just left their doors unlocked, but I was someone who couldn't sleep comfortably knowing someone could just walk into my room, so losing my key was a big deal. Everyone had a spare, including me, but I was pissed because I'd have to go make a copy of the key, and that was an extra annoyance I couldn't afford at the time. A few nights later, I woke up randomly in the night. I wasn't sure why at first, but then I heard it. There was a soft bumping coming from my closet every 20 seconds or so. It sounded like something shifting behind the door, like something was moving inside of my closet. I'm not one to scare easily, and I'm definitely not one to be helpless in a dangerous situation, so I was going to deal with this myself. I quietly got out of bed and took a deep breath. I slowly walked over to the closet, trying to keep my breathing under control. My heart was racing. In one fluid motion, I ripped the closet door open and screamed like a crazy person. Just as I expected, the woman was in there. She had one of my ties wrapped around her neck, and her eyes were wide open. She was holding a kitchen knife with her other hand. My scream must have startled her, because before I could react, she lunged at me with the knife outstretched. I screamed again. Only this one wasn't pretend. It was a scream of pure fear. I wrestled her to the ground and was able to disarm her pretty easily, given how frail and small she was. That didn't make the situation any less terrifying, though. She kicked and fought, and bit as I pinned her to the ground, screaming the whole time. I yelled for help, and I heard some doors slam, followed by some of my housemates running down the hall. My friend Lee immediately helped me immobilize the woman, and the two of us kept her pinned while someone else called the police. The rest of the night was a blur. The police got there quickly and arrested her on the spot. By that point, she had stopped screaming, but she refused to say anything either, which was extremely unsettling. The cops found my room key on her. Real big shocker there. A few weeks later, we got our answer about who she was. Apparently she was the property manager's sister, who he had been letting live there under the radar. She had severe mental health issues, and instead of getting her proper care, he had just thrown her into one of the unoccupied rooms. I believe the property manager was eventually arrested for negligence, and a slew of other things, and rightfully so. I honestly blame him so much more for what happened than her. If anything, I feel bad for her, but my pity won't erase the fact that she tried to kill me. I could have lost my life that night. I have no idea why she seems so interested in me specifically, but I can only hope nothing like that ever happens to me again. I'm graduating soon and I'm definitely going to miss college, but I don't think I'll ever be able to look back at my time here without thinking about that story too. I had just moved to a quiet little town in upstate New York. Small population, friendly neighbors, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. It was perfect for a fresh start. I was renting a house on Fieldstone Lane, a little out of the way, tucked between trees that groaned in the wind like they were tired of standing. The house was old, creaky, and carried the smell of wet wood and dust no matter how often I cleaned. But it had charm, or so I told myself. The previous owner had left behind some furniture, nothing too fancy, just enough to get by. There was an old grandfather clock that didn't tick, a mirror in the hallway with dark spots like mold on silver, and a rocking chair in the upstairs bedroom that always seemed to face the window, no matter how many times I turned it back. The first week was quiet, peaceful. Birds chirped in the morning, leaves rustled in the afternoon breeze. I'd sit on the porch with coffee and a book, thinking I'd finally found a place where I could breathe. Then I started noticing little things. The rocking chair would sometimes be facing the door when I came home. I didn't remember moving it. One night I woke up, and it was right by the foot of my bed, swaying gently, like someone had just gotten up from it. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, or maybe I'd moved it without realizing it. Sleepwalking made. One evening, I was cleaning out the attic. I found a box of photographs, black and white, curled at the edges. Most were family portraits, stiff smiles, blank stares. But one photo caught my eye. It was the hallway of the house, and in the background, just barely visible, was the mirror. A face stared back from the glass. Not the face of the person taking the photo, no. This face was wrong. It was pale, twisted, like someone had frozen mid-scream. The eyes were too big. The mouth was open too wide. I shoved the photo back in the box and didn't go back into the attic. That night, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate. I live alone. Or at least I thought I did. I grabbed a flashlight and crept up the stairs, every creak of the wood underfoot like a gunshot. I turned the corner into the hallway, and the mirror was covered in condensation like someone had been breathing on it. I hadn't showered. The house wasn't warm. There was no explanation. And in the middle of the condensation was a handprint, smaller than mine. I wiped it away with my sleeve, and told myself it was just some weird humidity thing. Old house, right? Things got worse.
I'd wake up to whispers, not loud enough to make out words, but close enough that I could feel the breath on my ear. Lights flickered. The smell of rotting flowers like funeral arrangements left too long in a vase started filling the house, especially near the mirror. One night I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I was going to move out. I started packing up, avoiding the mirror, avoiding the attic. But as I packed, I found something tucked behind the dresser in the bedroom. A small journal, bound in leather, stained with something dark. The entries were frantic, scrawled in a shaky hand. They talked about her, always her. She watches through the mirror. She sits in the chair. She whispers at night. The last entry was just 3 words: don't look back. That night, I covered the mirror with a sheet. I moved the rocking chair into the hallway and shut the bedroom door. I laid in bed, heart pounding, every little creak of the house magnified in my ear. At exactly 3:03 a.m., I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, heavy, deliberate knocks. Not on the front door, not on the window, on the mirror. I stayed frozen under the covers, my body paralyzed with fear. I didn't move until the sun rose. When I finally got the courage to take the sheet off the mirror, it was cracked. 3 long, jagged lines across the surface, like claw marks. I left the house that morning. I didn't pack. I didn't say goodbye. I just drove. The house is still. I don't know who lives in it now or if anyone does. Sometimes I still dream of it. Of the mirror. Of the chair. Of the face staring back at me, mouth open in that awful silent scream. And every time I wake up, I swear, I can hear the sound of a rocking chair, creaking in the distance. Story 3. I inherited the house from an uncle I never knew. My mother barely spoke of him, just said he was her older brother, and that he'd gone strange in his later years. When he passed away, the deed arrived in the mail, with a single note in his handwriting. Don't dig in the basement. That was it. No hello, no explanation, just a warning. The house was isolated, sitting on several acres of overgrown land in the middle of nowhere. I'd been between jobs, trying to escape city life, and figured it wouldn't hurt to check it out. If I didn't like it, I could sell it, flip it for some cash. Easy. The outside looked like something out of a forgotten horror film. Peeling paint, boarded up windows, vines creeping up the walls like fingers. Inside wasn't much better. Dust covered everything. The furniture looked like it had been there since but the power still worked. And so did the plumbing. Still, the place felt wrong. It was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Dead quiet. No birds outside. No wind. No insects. Just this thick, heavy silence. Like the house was holding its breath. I set up camp in one of the cleaner bedrooms, and planned to spend a few days cleaning. The basement door was in the hallway off the kitchen, locked with a rusted padlock. I stared at it more than I should have. I kept thinking about that note. Don't dig in the basement. Why would anyone dig in a basement? On the second night, I started hearing it. Faint at first. A tapping sound coming from beneath the floorboards, like knuckles gently rapping on wood. I thought maybe it was rats. Old house after all. But the tapping continued. It had rhythm. It came in sets of 3. Tap, 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 tap. Then silence. Then again. I tried to ignore it. Put in earbuds. Played music. But around 2 or 3 in the morning, it would start up again. Always from the same spot. The living room. Near the fireplace. I pried up a floorboard the next day. Nothing underneath. Just dirt. No tunnel. No rats. No signs of movement. Still, I poured some bleach in and nailed the board shut. That night, I woke up to a new sound. Whispers. Low, rasping whispers. Right outside my door. I held my breath, convinced it was a dream. But then I heard something drag across the floor. Something heavy. And the floorboard in the living room let out a loud creak. I grabbed a flashlight and walked the hallway slowly, my hand shaking so hard the beam trembled. I found nothing. But when I got to the living room, the board I'd nailed down, it was lifted up, lying neatly beside the hole, and in the dirt below, there were scratches. Deep, desperate scratches, like fingernails clawing upward. The padlock on the basement door was open the next morning. I don't remember unlocking it, but it was hanging there, loose, The door slightly ajar. I taped it shut, hammered in nails, blocked it with furniture. I wasn't going down there. I told myself that over and over, but the whispering got louder, and it started saying my name. One night, I woke to find dirt on the floor beside my bed, a trail leading back to the hallway. My feet were clean, the shoes by the door untouched. I followed the trail terrified to the basement door. It was wide open. I should have run, but something pulled at me. Curiosity. A feeling I can't explain. I stepped through the doorway and descended the stairs. The air grew colder with every step. The smell of damp earth and decay filled my nose. I reached the bottom and shone my light across the room. There was a hole in the center of the dirt floor, freshly dug, about 6 feet deep, and inside it, bones, a whole skeleton curled in on itself, hands covering its face, and next to it, a second hole, smaller, not yet finished. A shovel was leaning against the wall. I backed away, heart pounding, and that's when I heard the whisper, right beside my ear. Finish what he started. I sprinted up the stairs, slammed the door, and this time I boarded it shut with anything I could find. Planks, nails, furniture, even an old refrigerator I dragged over. I didn't sleep. The whispers didn't stop, and I could hear something moving under the floor, crawling, scraping. I left the house that morning, packed my car and never looked back. Didn't even lock the door. Sometimes when I lie awake at night, I still hear it. Tap, tap, tap. 3 soft knocks, coming from under the bed, like it followed me. Story 4. I moved to a small town after the divorce. Somewhere quiet. I found a rental cottage tucked away on the edge of the woods. Cheap, cozy, and the kind of place that didn't ask too many questions. The landlord was an old woman named Mrs. Teller. She lived 2 houses down, and greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "The cottage has been empty a long time," she said. "Just keep the curtains closed after dark, and don't let the still ones see you." I thought she was joking. That weird kind of country superstition, so I just smiled and nodded. But she didn't laugh, just handed me the keys and shuffled away. The first week was uneventful, peaceful even. The town was quiet, the people polite, but distant, and the forest around the house made everything feel insulated, like I was wrapped in a blanket of trees. But then the scratching started. It was soft at first, almost like wind against the window panes, but it only happened at night, and always on the side of the house facing the woods. I checked once, thinking it was a branch. There was no tree close enough to reach, just darkness, and the long line of trees staring back at me. I asked the grocery clerk about it the next day, just casually. "You live in that place by the woods," he said, his voice dropping a little. "You seen him yet?" "Seen who?" He didn't answer, just scanned my groceries and said, "Keep your curtains closed." By the second week I started seeing movement in the woods. Not animals. At least, not ones I recognized. Just shapes. Pale shapes. Standing between the trees. Perfectly still. I watched one for nearly 5 minutes. Didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stood there, facing the house, as if it knew I was watching. That night, the scratching came again. Louder this time. More insistent. Like claws dragging across glass. I tried to ignore it. And then I heard my name. A soft whisper. Right outside the window. I threw the curtain open. There was nothing. But when I looked down, I saw prints in the dirt. Bare feet. Small. Too small. I told Mrs. Teller the next morning. She poured tea like we were talking about the weather. "You left the curtain open, didn't you?" she said. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. "They can't get in unless you see them," she said. "They'll try to get your attention. Scratch. Whisper. Knock. But it's the eyes they want. Once you see them, they don't go away." I laughed, nervously. "You're serious?" She nodded. "They're the still ones. They're always watching. And once you see them, they want to be seen again." I didn't know whether to believe her, but I closed the curtains that night. Everyone. Taped them shut. Even. Still. I heard them. Tap, tap, tap. And sometimes the whispering would start up, begging, pleading, look at me. I started seeing them during the day, out of the corner of my eye, in reflections, in the mirror, sometimes just behind me, never moving, never blinking, just there. I tried to leave town, packed a bag, started driving, got about 10 miles before the fog rolled in, thick, unnatural fog. I slowed to a crawl, couldn't see more than a foot ahead. Then the engine died. I got out, heart hammering, and through the haze I saw them, lined up on both sides of the road, motionless, pale, eyes too wide, too bright. I turned back, got in the car, locked the doors. When the fog cleared, I was back in front of the cottage, like I'd never left. That night, I didn't sleep, just sat in the center of the house, surrounded by every lamp I owned, curtains drawn tight. But the scratching started again, and this time it didn't stop. From every wall, every window, every direction, it was like they were trying to dig their way in. And then silence, dead silence. I crept toward the front door and pressed my ear against it. No sound. I opened the door a crack, just darkness, and a face, right there, mouth smiling, eyes staring, perfectly still. I slammed the door and screamed, but it was too late. I'd seen it. Now they were in the house. I could hear them behind me, beneath the floorboards, above the ceiling, watching, waiting. I called the police. They didn't come. I tried to leave again, but the town, it loops, no matter which direction I drive. I always come back to the cottage. I haven't slept in 3 days, haven't opened the curtains once, but I feel them, just beyond the walls, watching, waiting for me to look again. Story 5. It was the kind of place people didn't talk about, the kind of house you pass on a drive through the country, half hidden by overgrown brush and trees, sitting alone at the end of a long dirt road, windows dark, paint faded and curling, a skeleton of what once was. I never meant to go there. It wasn't on any map, and GPS gave up halfway through the route. But I was on a road trip, taking the scenic way through the back roads, and I must have taken a wrong turn. By the time I realized I was lost, it was already getting dark. That's when I saw the house and the light in the upstairs window. I thought maybe someone could help with directions, or at the very least, offer a place to call a tow truck. My car had been sputtering for miles, and now it was barely run. I pulled up in front of the house, engine wheezing its final breath, and stepped out. The air felt wrong, thick, heavy, like it hadn't moved in years. There was no wind, no bird song, not even the sound of insects. Just stillness. I knocked on the front door. It creaked open all on its own. Inside, it smelled like dust and rot, the kind of scent that sticks to your lungs. The furniture was old, draped in yellowed sheets. The wallpaper was peeling. The floor groaned with every step, as if protesting my presence. But the strangest thing, the house felt familiar, like I'd been there before. I shook the feeling off. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone home?" No answer. I tried my phone again. No signal. I should have left right then, but I didn't. There was something pulling me deeper inside. A memory, a voice in the back of my mind whispering, "Just a little further." I climbed the stairs. The light was still on in the upstairs room. When I opened the door, the bulb overhead flickered, and then steadied. Inside was a child's bedroom, old-fashioned, frozen in time. Toys scattered on the floor, a wooden rocking horse, a mobile above the bed, slowly spinning though there was no wind. And on the wall, Dozens of crayon drawings, each one of the same thing. The house, drawn from every angle, from the road, from the woods, from inside, looking at. And in each picture, there was a figure standing at the window. A tall man in a black coat. Watching, I turned to leave. And that's when I saw it. The mirror. It was cracked. But in the reflection, I saw myself standing in the room, and behind me a man, black coat, wide grin, eyes like burnt holes. I spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. I stumbled back, heart racing, and fled down the stairs. But when I reached the front door, it was gone. No door. Just a blank wall. I turned confused, and the house was different. The furniture was gone. The wallpaper had changed. Floral. Pristine. Like it had just been redone. The lights were warm now, cheerful. Laughter echoed from the next room. And then I saw her, a woman, early 30s. Dressed in 1950s style. She smiled as she passed through the hallway like she didn't see me. Dinner's ready. She called. A man appeared behind her, kissing her cheek. Then a child ran past. Giggling, I stood there stunned. Like a ghost in someone else's life. And just like that, everything blinked away, back to rot and silence. But the house had shifted. The hallway led to a different room now. Each time I turned a corner, the layout changed. The walls breathed. The ceiling stretched. And sometimes I heard whispers. Remember, you were here before. I don't know how long I wandered. Hours, days. The concept of time twisted like everything else in that place. I saw more flashes of lives that weren't mine. A birthday party where no one aged. A funeral where the corpse sat up and smiled. A wedding with no groom. Only the bride reciting vows to a shadow. And each time, I saw that man in the black coat, watching, just watching. Eventually I found the basement. I didn't want to go down there, but my feet moved on their own. It was pitch black. I could hear something breathing in the dark. And then one by one, lights flickered on overhead, revealing walls covered in photos, hundreds of them. Every visitor who had ever come to the house. Old portraits, Polaroids, faded digital prints, each face frozen in terror. And in the center of every photo, no matter the time or era, stood the man in black. Then I saw the last photo on the wall. It was me, standing in that upstairs room, staring into the mirror, with the man behind me. The lights went out again. I screamed. I don't know how, but I found a door. Somehow it was just there. I burst out into the night and didn't stop running until I hit the main road. A passing truck picked me up. I tried to explain what happened. He didn't say much. But when I described the house, he gripped the wheel tight. "You're lucky," he muttered. "Most don't make it out." When I looked back over my shoulder, the house was gone. Just trees and empty road. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I see it again. That house, and the man at the window, waiting for me to come back. Because the house doesn't forget, and it never lets go of the ones it remembers. Stories.